you go to, is it live one, right? Good afternoon, everyone. It is 4:30. I'd like to begin by standing for a moment of silence, and we'll follow that with the Pledge of Allegiance. Please join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good. If we could have roll call, please.
Brad Hint. Here. Ken Snyder.
Here.
Pete Hamill.
Here.
Chantel Ostra. Here. Tom Eggers.
Here. Sorry.
At yesterday's meeting, we got through the business of through point 8 reports. So we will be starting today at item number 10, since 9 is adjournment. Am I right, Pete?
You're on the regular council meeting.
Oh, no, this is the wrong one.
So Mayor, I did send out an email to everybody, but I do have a hard stop tonight at 6 o'clock, so.
Yes, I saw
Yeah,
that.
okay, very good.
Very good, thank you. So yeah, item 9 is actually local option sales tax, hotel motel tax, and urban renewal. First item up, local option sales tax. Is that you?
You have a public forum first.
Oh, yes.
Offer a public forum.
Yes, that's true. Anyone wishing to address the council at this time that won't be speaking later? Nothing? Okay. Then we'll move on. So local option sales tax is the first item up there. Who's going to present that?
Sam.
You are.
I think Sam.
Okay.
If you could pull up the PDF version on your iPads, and we'll take a look at local option sales tax. So, a couple of items to note. On the right-hand side in blue and yellow, you have the reserves. You have the $270,000 in regular reserves, and that's with the LED lighting subtracted out. That's an estimated number. Angie and I recommend that that number not fall below $250,000. That ultimately is your call. You have $194,291 available in the CIP reserves per the Emergency Services Task Force. That includes this the new allocation for 24-25 of $102,470 plus the $91,821 that was put in this last year that were also known as the current fiscal year. So you have $194,291 that you could use now, or you could continue to build it. You basically have to decide whether you want to spend what's in that fund on fire and police capital items, or fire or police capital items, or some sort of combination, or if you don't spend it out of the fund and you let that fund build, then you'd be dipping into your reserves to the tune of, you got those two numbers below under request for consideration. You have the $115,000 plus the $77,200. You could spend out of local option sales tax for that as well. And or you could look at a debt issue, which I mentioned last night. So I was asked today by one of the council members if there were some alternatives to borrowing, and here they are in no particular order. You could spend what's in the new CIP reserves per emergency services task force fund on fire and police capital purchases for this coming year and wait on the tanker. You could spend what's in that new CIP reserves on the current 24-25 requests and borrow for the tanker. You could defer the tanker purchase until the vision for the new fire station, et cetera, is determined. I understand those two things aren't necessarily linked together, but that is an option. And then the last option, again, is you could pay for that and other items after accumulating more cash in the CIP reserves per the Emergency Services Task Force or the Fire Department's capital fund. So we can circle back to that later. Just interrupt me if you'd like to talk about that part of it. Otherwise, I'll just keep going. Okay, we can always circle back. Animal control, that's the same. Sirens, this will do one siren. So we have one siren in local option sales tax and one in TIF. Mosquito control, Todd, that's a slight change.
Yeah,
Up just a hair. Trees in non-TIF areas, which is basically the heart of town. I'm going to touch on that one a little bit more. Anything to add on that? That's just kind of a guess. There was a discussion last night on planting. You wanted to wait on planting, which made a lot of sense, and obviously we wouldn't do planting in the right-of-way anyway with the moratorium. But theoretically, you could use that $100,000 for planting in non-rights-of-way as well. You have flexibility there.
Can I just throw a comment in on that right now? Yeah. In terms of planting, somebody was in the store today and mentioned that Sioux Falls is also clearing out a lot of their trees. They are incentivizing their citizens by paying them to plant trees again. Not in the right of way, but something to think about. Right. So that's all.
I think the biggest surprise and lost is the surprise that came up recently. I know Larry, I know you're here for a different reason, but and this isn't your fault obviously, but the ICAP renewal has just been an extraordinary increase in that is mandated by the 1995 public vote to come largely out of local option sales tax. So if we have any questions on that, then we could ask Larry to step forward if he doesn't mind. So would it be okay if we had him address this real quick? This is kind of, would you mind, and I'm sorry I didn't prep you for this, but you're quick on your feet, so can you tell us a little bit about this
Sure.
this renewal that we're expecting?
So Larry Smith, Perspective Insurance, and thank you for taking a few minutes. So lots of changes in the insurance industry, as some of you may know, some of you may not. I kind of like to tell a little story in the background and say, insurance companies are kind of designed that they know that they're going to have 2 bad years in a 10-year span. It's just the way it's going to happen. That's what history tells us. Unfortunately, they've had 4 years in a row where they've had between 130 and 150% loss ratios. So in other words, they're paying out $1.30 to $1.50 for every dollar they're taking in, every year for 4 years. What also happens is, of course, insurance reserves set aside to pay future claims, and they have that invested. Well, we all know what happened to the investments 3 years ago and so on, and as they're losing money in their investments and not having capital gains there to pay claims, they're losing money there, they're paying out more claims than anticipated. Insurance companies' reserves are gone, and in order to stay in business, they have to rebuild those, and that's really the bottom line. And so, unfortunately, it's not just the city, it's every business I've been to in for the last 8 to 12 months is seeing that kind of 30 to 40% rate increase. And unfortunately, I think ICAPS wants to get ahead of that and let you know, because budget talks are going on, but to kind of anticipate a large increase and not to be blindsided by it, when July comes along. So.
Where does that fall in terms of our fiscal year?
Well, the renewal on the insurance is July 1, so.
Okay, so.
Right, so that gets paid in July. And so, of course, you're budgeting now, right?
Right.
So they wanted to get ahead of it to let you know that that's an anticipation.
Got a question for you.
Yeah.
So is there any jeopardy of loss of coverage based upon their financial woes for the city's position?
So ICAP is a company designed for municipalities. The board of ICAP is city managers, county auditors. ICAP's still financially very sound. So is that an anticipation? No.
I mean, for the underwriters, are there going to be issues where they won't cover?
I don't see that.
Okay.
There are businesses we have major changes on. We may see some deductible changes, things like that, but I don't see anything. That program is very strong due to the participation and the people on the board understanding the program. So it's good. I think it's a sound program. It's a sound, financially sound. I don't think we'll see anything there.
Okay. Just going to cost more.
Yes, unfortunately.
Any other questions for Larry? All right, thanks, Larry.
The number that we have here for property insurance, is that current, or is that anticipating an increase?
That's the projected.
It is?
Yep.
Okay.
Of
We plugged in the 30% increase.
Okay.
Right. Yep. And that's a guess based on what's happening across the state, based on our loss history. A few years ago, our loss history was a little higher, but it's not too bad now. So it just kind of depends. It's a guess. If I can keep going? All right. So thank you for that. I appreciate the partnership that you and I have in the city, and you have. You do a good job representing us, and appreciate that. So, so to keep going, we've got transfer to employee benefits. That is part of the 1995 vote. You've got, we try to, for zoning and code enforcement, we do try to use TIF as much as possible, but we do have some code enforcement that needs to take place out of local option sales tax. One example would be the house to the east of City Park that looks like an impressionist painting. That is in not currently in urban renewal zone, so we've been using loss to deal with that issue, but we are in the process of putting that entire block in urban renewal, so that would be, we could use TIF for that in the future. So hopefully we won't have to spend that whole 25, but it really should be there. Street lights, that number has gone up over the years. Todd, has that changed a whole lot in your experience?
Out of Lost?
Yeah.
No, but we're constantly been looking for different places to help support that. I think next year last year of the rate equalization that Mid-America is going through. And then we should get a little pause on those increases is what I've been told.
Okay. Why don't you quickly hit the next one, the Park and Rec program one? I'm somewhat not as familiar with that one as you are. 35,000. It's underneath the 50 for streetlights.
I'm drawing a blank on that one. I was thinking the 30,000 general improvement one.
Okay.
Help me, Inch.
Mostly for recreation, for economic betterment.
All right, then you have, I'll just hit, jump down a few. If I'm skipping something you want to talk about, just stop me. Pool operations, this does include guard wages. There was a significant jump in that over the last several years in order to recruit guards. Other than that, we're not using loss for wages. We're using it for operational costs. Cemetery operations and rec operations are two other items.
For clarification, the pool transfer is only wages. It is not operations.
Part-time guard wages.
Right. Yep. Okay, thank you. All right, so now let's go down to the request for consideration. We have our groups that we invest in. They're going to be speaking. Some of them will be speaking later in the agenda, but let's just hit a couple of thoughts here down below under requests for consideration. So one of the options that you could do, and I alluded to it earlier, is if you spent the $115,000 for police capital, the $77,000 for fire capital, if you spent that from the CIP reserves for Emergency Services Task Force in that blue box, then that would take that down to almost zero, but then you'd be able to fund the rest of the most of the rest of the list except for the splash pad. I'm not suggesting that you do that. I'm just saying that that's one of the options that you could do if you're looking at the math. The library windows, as I mentioned last night, I would like to add we're working on adding the library to our urban renewal plan. We need to work through some hoops on that one. That is not a guarantee. They've made a compelling case to address that issue, and so if you wanted, you could fund that from lost for now, and then if we are able to get it approved in urban renewal, then we would just turn that back. So the rest of it we can save until a little bit later in the agenda. Anybody have any questions?
That 194,000 CIP reserves, is that the projected balance with funding it through the next fiscal year, or is that where it's at right now?
That includes 10% from the initial allocation for the current fiscal year and 10% of the projected allocation for the upcoming fiscal year. So that is, if you look at the line right below it, you have it's $102,470 plus for the new fiscal year, plus the $91,821 that you already approved. Make sense? And those two numbers add up to 194.
The number
Right here.
Right below the yellow.
Oh, okay.
You got 102,470 plus 91,821. So that includes the new allocation. We're taking 10% right off the top and putting it in there.
Sam, just one clarification to the statement you made about funding the rest. That was true of an earlier version of this, but since then there's been modifications, so now there's about a $54,000.
Right, because we added the windows and the pavilion. So
Correct.
thank you very much for clarifying that.
So just for clarification, your statement, Sam,
Yep.
you're saying that the library on down minus the splash pad would also be funded through the reserve? Or did I misunderstand that?
So,
I guess what I'm wondering is where are the funds coming from? I mean, do we have enough loss to cover?
Tom, the 63,936, that's estimated balance in bold, that's the number you'd be working off of.
Which one?
63,936.32.
So out of the 595,764, we've got 63,936 to apply without seeking additional revenue somewhere else.
correct.
Okay.
So, if I could further answer your question, or if I might.
Yeah.
So, a couple of numbers you could write down while we're looking at the rest of, while we move on to TIF and then circle back to this, is you have $20,000 potentially to work with out of your reserves, because you got 270, so you got 20,000 there, okay? You could scratch the splash pad from loss for now, because Todd and I believe that we've found a way to potentially include that in urban renewal. That doesn't mean it's funded in TIF, it just means that it would be potentially included in the urban renewal plan. There's a big difference there. But I think, okay, so you get 20,000 that you could take from the 270. The other thing that you could do, Tom, is you could take the 115 and the 77 for police and fire capital and take that out of the CIP reserves.
Right.
So that's another thing you could do.
Okay.
And then you could look at the rest individually. So those are a couple of things that you could do for adjustments.
But there is no other revenue source for these that we've identified?
No, I mean, pavilion, one of the reasons that the pavilion 63,000 is in here is because they lost their levy. They would have otherwise received 19,000 and change in the upcoming budget. They currently have a balance, Tricia, of what, 55,000, 58,000? And you're planning on spending some of that on other things, correct? You mind stepping up real quick? You said 17 for the sign in front?
Yeah, I think we have around 55
Bring the
currently.
mic close, because Ray said they were having a hard time getting some of the comments.
Ray, okay.
Yeah.
So around 55 we have currently in our in our levy fund. We plan to use about 17,000, I'm going to say 17,000 for our front sign. The balance, we would like to carry over into some other projects, whether it be with the storage, but those monies, those funds are to be used for like replacement of goods, which we will be replacing a lot of tables and chairs coming up soon since we've been open 6.5 years. So there is funds in there, but we just don't want to deplete it all right away. So that's why we put some into the capital fund request.
Okay, thank
That
you.
make sense? Yeah, you're
Thank
welcome.
you. I think we've all noticed that there's fairly large requests coming out of the golf course. And I guess I'm going to state my opinion on that right now. I don't think that adding 10,000 to what we've previously done is fiscally responsible in this case, especially when we're dealing with levy reductions to other departments that we own and operate as well. I would say that if we funded it even at what we did last year, which I believe was 15,000, I would want the other 10,000 to go back to the library. I think we need to find some way to strengthen the library from what we've asked them to reduce by. What I heard yesterday was they took $10,000 out of book purchases. Well, that's the foundation of a library, is books. So I think if we're looking at these figures, I think that we need to keep the library in our thoughts on this. So yes, there's been levy changes, but if we're going to be spending dollars to these other entities, I think the library needs to be reconsidered. I'll leave it at that.
I'd also agree with you, Tom, on that. The other side is, I would say, that's a request. I think we should keep them all the same as last year.
So what would that leave over to bring back into the library?
I don't have that total, but
Okay.
I'm just thinking we should leave all those requests the same as last year. I think we need to worry about, yes, some of them do very good for the community, but we have needs in the Sheldon City Hub to take care of first.
Right, and the library is part of our structure, right? We own the library, and so I think that the value of that organization to the city reaches more people than a golf course does, so.
Okay. Yep. And then, let's see here. Any other questions on the spreadsheet? We can circle back to that after the presentations a little bit later from the partner organizations. We set it up that way to allow you to kind of think about it, and then we would come back. So on that note, before I jump into TIF, I want to mention that the four of the requests from partner organizations, Golf, Mid-Sioux, Upper Des Moines, and Family Crisis Centers, which is a new request, those four are not currently funded out of local option sales tax. They're on the option list. Rides, Children's World, O'Brien County Economic Development, and NCC Life, the LLRC, the Wellness Center, those are funded out of TIF. And there was funding allocated for those. So and we now get into urban renewal tax increment financing. On the iPads, it's 10B. So if you want to click on that. Anything on, did I go through Lost too fast? Anybody have anything on that? Okay.
I guess the only question I would have is those requests down below, are there any other options to fund those, or is local option sales tax it?
No, I think local option is the only option.
Okay.
Yeah, they're really not tippable, if that's a word, items.
It is now.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, so let's go into tax increment financing. And you'll know you have it if you see two blue boxes on the right-hand side, one that has reserves in bold and the other has current future rebate liabilities with the list of rebates. On the same page, there's two. Okay. So I'll just hit some of the highlights. You have the rebates totaled there, and there's an asterisk, and that comes from the blue box there down below. You have the allocation listed for O'Brien County of $6,667, and you have SCDC, the allocation of $130, as Mark Brown talked about yesterday. Storefront, that's the same. Rides is $25, Children's World $30, blight remediation is $125. This number fluctuates. I have typically not used all of this number. In fact, you have seen a few resolutions for advancement of costs come through that I have mailed to the offending property owner, and then it's also ultimately we haven't had to spend anything except for my time to write the letter. So it really works out well when we show people that we are willing to abate the nuisance, but then don't have to. But I think that's important that we keep that number in there. We have NCC, that's a new line item that used to be in lost. We have consultant professional fees, that number used to be higher, it's now 100,000. We try not to use that all if we don't need to, but we're doing an urban renewal update, and that's also used for bonding costs. Trees, 150. Todd, do you think we can spend all of that? I know you've taken out quite a few trees. Yeah. But I don't think it'll be 150 every year, right? I mean, I don't think you're going to need this two or 3 years from now.
It goes back to what we talked about last night. How hard is the ash floor actually going to hit us, and when we find out? Yes, you're right. At some point, we're going to run out of urban renewal area that we can utilize these funds for. If you go back a couple of years, I think I said around $1 million is what my estimate cost us to keep it going. So we spent a couple $100,000 last year, so we may be halfway there by the time this year's requested.
All right, the next 4, 18th Avenue traffic light. Todd mentioned that last night. I think you mentioned 16th Street last night too, didn't you?
Not sure if I did or not. 16th Street is a section in O'Brien County that they're looking to rehabilitate. But the first half mile going east out of town by Joel Hengeveld's place out towards the new water tower is actually in our corporate limits. Therefore, we have some responsibility towards the repairs of that road. We have the same thing going the other direction past Kent Feeds and Sudbeck Trucking with Sioux County.
Okay. Wyman and General Street, stormwater improvements, and Highway 18. You want to hit those 3 items very quickly?
Sure. The Wyman culvert is just a culvert that is in very bad condition. The 16th Street culvert is the one right by Maintainer. It's a large culvert that is in poor condition. The top, it's actually starting to come down. And,
Does that tie into what they're going to do then?
It will, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. What was the other one you mentioned, Sam?
General Street and stormwater and Highway 18.
So Highway 18 is just kind of a placeholder
10,000.
in case we got to do some planning dollars for the 2026 project that I talked about last night with the DOT. And general drainage and street improvements, that could be utilized for some of the patching projects that are in that buffet list that I give you, or any other stormwater or street improvements that we decided necessary.
How does that number compare to what we did this year for cracks, chip sealing and such?
2 different numbers. We did about $100,000 worth of chip sealing, and then we did about another $250,000 worth of just patchwork. So similar.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Keep going. All right, cemetery improvements, stone repairs. The stone repair is a shift from, used to be lost, and then that has been shifted over to urban renewal with including the cemetery in the urban renewal area. Again, the urban renewal update is pending. We're updating the area and the plan, but the 5,000 stone repairs has been moved over and then combined with a larger line item. Todd, do you remember what the rest of the 70 was?
Roads.
Roads, okay. Yeah, you've done a nice job with that. That looks good.
Roads, and then I think a few more trees. Not ash trees there, cedar trees that are.
You have, okay, anything else? Okay, then you have the siren, as I mentioned earlier, 1 out of lost, 1 out of TIF. You have the airport. This is a lesser outlay than what we've had in past years. You have the layout plan analysis and runway safety planning. And then Western Avenue. So as was presented last week by Scott Stevenson, there was a memo link to that agenda, and then there's one link to the agenda later on that talks about potential bonding options. So you have the ability, you have the opportunity here. We do need to bond for Western Avenue. There just simply isn't enough cash in the TIF fund to be able to cover that. The project has gone from a $4.4 million project to a $5 million project. A few years ago, it was less than that. But the cost that we're seeing, plus some of the necessary expenses for sewer upgrades, as Todd mentioned last night, require us to do a little bit more than anticipated. So we're looking at a 12-year note. We could do a 15. I'm a fan of shorter notes. I don't like 18 to 20, but we could do that too. But if you did a 12-year note and you used $750,000 in FAST Act and about $790 from the previous bond, you'd have to do a note for $3.6 million. You could expand the $3.6 million note to 4.7, and then you'd be looking at trying to remember, what was it, 400, the payment would then be what, 450, do you remember?
Yeah, it added about $100,000.
Yeah, so there seems to be a desire to do Oak from Washington to North 7th, and you could add that in. You do run into bandwidth issues for Todd if you add too much more, but there are some other important projects that you could consider, and I'll let him tell you what he's able to do or not. But down below you have a number of other public works projects. You have 9th Street over here, and then you have the Alphabet Street drainage improvements. You have some miscellaneous patching. Where would that miscellaneous patching be?
Probably a combination of some stuff on the east side and some stuff on the north side.
Okay. Then you have the frontage roads. That is a guess for the number. And then you have
It's an engineered estimate.
Oh, that is an engineered. Okay. Then you have the trail improvement, and then water tower number 1. Todd and I, our conference call with Ayers Cooney yesterday, we could try to fit that into TIF, but it doesn't fit as well as I thought it would, or was hoping it would. So
Square peg round ball, probably hard for us to recommend that.
Yeah. All right.
What would be the downside of waiting on Oak Street to bond for that and roll it into one? I mean, imagine we'll be bonding next year for something else.
Would be the downside?
Mm-hmm.
I think the only downside would be interest risk and paying your fees to your bond counsel.
But we will do, most likely we would have another bond rolling around in the next fiscal year anyway.
That's up to you guys. We'll always have enough projects in front of you. You could borrow money
Yeah.
every year
Right.
if you so chose.
Todd, will we be expending the 3.6 million in 25, 26 for the project on Western, or?
Yeah, it'll be some in 25, 26 and some in 26, 27. That's the unfortunate part of having your fiscal year in the middle of construction season. Excuse me, it'll be some in 24, 25
Okay.
and some in 25, 26. I'm sorry, I said that wrong. Because the construction will start spring of 25, so the tail end of 24, 25, and it'll carry over to 25, 26.
So is it feasible just to bond for what our expectations will be for the fiscal year we're talking about?
Dangerous game. What if construction gets ahead of plan and you haven't secured enough funds?
Yeah, I guess that's what you'd have to take into consideration with, I mean, if we're gonna expend half of it in each budget, consecutive budgets, we would then necessarily not be having to carry over bonded money for a whole year.
Sam, can we even legally do that? I don't even think we can legally do that, can we?
Well, remember what we did with the water tower is that we published we bonded for the money, but we published it published it for multiple projects. And that worked out really, with Water Tower Western Avenue. Even though it was truly a water tower note, we published it as both. And then it was amazing how it worked out because the water tower ended up coming under budget. So
I'm aware of that, but I don't think that's the question that Tom's asking. You asking if we can bond for a portion of the Western Avenue project?
Correct.
And I don't think we can award a bid to a project we don't have funds secured. I believe the answer is no, Tom, we cannot.
The project will be bid as one, not two separate based on...
No, Oak would be bid separately, totally separate.
No, I'm
That's
talking Western Avenue. They're going to do one half now, one half the next fiscal year, but it's bid as one project.
Correct. Yeah. That's the way I understand it.
Bid is one project, funds expended in both fiscal years.
Yes.
Whether it'll be 50% or not, I have no clue. And I'm not willing to wager against on that.
Just for conversation. Trying to see if we can get the most bang for our buck, so.
No, I understand.
Okay, good. If I can. Couple other things regarding tax increment financing under request for consideration. Emergency services, not site specific. There's a qualifier there. Obviously, it needs to be in the urban renewal zone. So if it's not in the urban renewal zone, then TIF cannot be considered. If you go out to the city's website, sheldoniowa.gov, and go under documents, I have an urban renewal or TIF section, and I've got a nice map there that you can look to see the map of what's included in the urban renewal area. So anyway, we have that plugged in into the urban renewal plan and the urban renewal area, subject to public hearing. It is not currently funded, so that's something that would have to be discussed. Okay, and then you have let's scroll all the way to the top real quick and look at the reserves. You have the investment balance of projected 7/1 of 24 of $70,000, and then you have the land purchase reserves that was allocated from the current fiscal year. So you have total reserves in there of $741,000. And down below under request for consideration, you have a second number of $671,000 that you could move into the same reserve fund to save up money for exercising additional options. The rest of that little note, that's self-explanatory, if you can read the small print. Anything else on, any questions on TIF? Okay, we'll have some important decisions to make on TIF. We can circle back on the recap, or we can do it now, but we will need to decide soon what we do for bonding.
So Sam, do we have any expectation on what we want for a minimum balance, cash balance for TIF? Because that spreadsheet's showing that through this budget, we'll end up with about $1,350,000 roughly.
Well,
is that available funds, or is?
I would say that that is available funds because I have cushion built in because of what I told you earlier on blight remediation, and then how things cash flow in some of the other areas. So I feel more comfortable with spending that than I would with lost. But I will say this, is that you also have, and I mentioned it in one of my other memos, I think I've written 4 already, but one of the other things that I had said earlier is that you have a callable note in wastewater, the TIF note. So you had a We had a large note that was taken out in 2017. 30% was out of tax increment financing, and 70% was out of a revenue note. So the revenue note doesn't count against your bond capacity. You cannot pay it off with TIF, but the 30% you can. You have $3 million that roughly that's callable, and you could make, let's say, $1 million payment on that. So I like paying off debt. You remember what we did a few years ago with the pavilion, but when I talked to Scott Stevenson's about this, the conclusion that we both came to is with interest rates being what they are, and with the low interest rate that we're paying on that note, there's really no point in paying it off. But I wanted to disclose to you, if you're going to take out a large note for other things, such as emergency services, or a large note for public works, and you want to free up some debt capacity to do that, then you could throw $1 million at that note and knock down your debt capacity. But you have room for quite a bit of, based on Scott's presentation, you have room for quite a bit of debt before you're at the 75% threshold, which is the number he recommended not exceeding.
But feasibility, we could go down to the requests and whittle away on that 1.4 million without having to borrow a dime, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Okay.
So we could actually fund a fairly large project or multiples off of that 1.35. Okay. Thanks for the clarification on that.
Todd, anything to add on this? I mean, this kind of matches what you and I had talked about too, doesn't it, what I just said?
Yeah, no, I
Okay.
think you covered it.
Okay. So do we have consensus, it's all right if I ask this now, do we have consensus for a note on Western Avenue? Then my next question is going to be, do you want to tack onto that note for Oak or something else?
Well, we could actually pay for Oak out of the balance.
Yes, we could pay for Oak out of the balance, is what he said.
Okay.
Yeah?
Did you have, I wasn't looking, did we get consensus, or nobody's saying anything? So, do we have consensus on Western Avenue, bonding for it?
You have my support on that.
Say we committed to that, we have quite a lot of that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
But I do think we need to rethink the 1.4 cash balance on any of these others before we borrow money. I think that would behoove us to have that discussion. Instead of bonding, instead of adding to the bond.
Oak Street's in tough shape. We did the east half. I think now we need to jump across Washington and do the other half, or till 7th Street, 7th Avenue, I mean. I wouldn't have a problem doing them too.
no, I think that'd be good.
But are you saying we should bond extra money for that? Or look at our cash balance to cover it?
Yeah, I think so.
Think so what?
I think that we should bond for it.
You think we should bond for it versus using our cash balance?
Well, where's that gonna leave us? If we use,
It'd leave you with 250,000 bucks as a cash balance for the,
how do you guys feel about that?
that's why I was asking the question about
Yeah.
a minimum balance.
I don't know that I've got an idea of what a minimum balance I want, but keep in mind, if you knock it down to 250,000 and someone comes with like an upfront rebate, it could put us in trouble.
If, in that scenario you just described, put a number to that.
Upfront rebate?
Yeah.
Dollar General was to the tune of $60-some thousand. So it just depends on the size of the project.
Could be some of these projects that are listed that are liabilities, it could be any one of those, similar to those.
I mean, if you got a Kent Nutrition, which was $1.2 million, I mean, if they wanted an upfront, you'd have to probably say no or dip into your reserves.
So Angie, if we're looking at the Oak Street project not being next fiscal budget, but really the other one,
Mhm.
can we just put it in reserve?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
That way you're covered, in case something comes up, but yet we have at least identified dollars for the project,
Okay.
so it can go to bid.
So you're saying bond the entire amount for Oak Street?
No,
Oh,
I'm talking about bonding just for Western
okay.
and using the cash reserve up above
Mhm.
of 1.346 and reserve a portion of those dollars for whatever we decide for the request for consideration. So it could be just for the Oak Street project, or it could be a conglomeration of other requests that are below here.
Todd, how hard do you think these numbers are?
They're pretty solid. They all have about, some have 10, some have 15% contingency in them yet. I mean, they used to be Todd numbers, but now they have had an engineer's eyes lay on them, and they've been adjusted accordingly. And they also have 2025 inflation figured into them.
At what percent?
An assumed 4%.
Okay, thanks.
I was just thinking as you were talking, and I can't guarantee you this, but if you approved Oak with cash, it is potentially possible that we could work ahead on that one a little bit and maybe bid it in mid-24 so they could get a start in 24 and finish in 25, but that would be pretty tight. So I wouldn't sit here tonight and guarantee you that that could happen. But if you approved it, it's something that I might at least look at.
At least you have options.
Right.
I'm just trying not to borrow extra money
Yeah.
at a percentage rate that we're all questioning in our minds right now, whether it's prudent to do it. So if we're going to have 1.4 that's really available, then let's budget it.
I would agree with that.
Can I make a suggestion on that, Tom, is when we publish for the hearing and we do the bond, for Western Avenue, let's consider doing it like we did with the water tower in Western Avenue, where we publish it for both because Todd's working on trying to get Western Avenue to be less than, help me out here, Todd, we're trying to get it to come under, and we may have found a way to do that. So then you could use leftover bond funds
For another project,
for Oak.
a listed project.
Right, and then you wouldn't have to hold another public hearing if you have leftover bond funds that you're just sitting on.
I have no problem on how you structure it as long as it's 3.6 million.
Right, but,
Tops.
yeah. I do all right on that?
Yep.
Okay. Okay, so it sounds like we have consensus for a $3.6 million note for Western Avenue. It'll probably be 12 years, might end up being 15 depending on what the amortization is, but it would have the title of Western Avenue and Oak so that we have some flexibility if Western Avenue comes under budget. Okay?
Okay.
So do we have consensus on reserving the 1.1 for Oak out of the cash balance shown?
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
I mean, I'll support that, but I don't know what you guys think.
You can't bond part of it. You can't, that's not,
Sure you could.
that's not legal. I mean, to have a little extra,
if we put it in reserve, we've got extra because we're not going to expend it next fiscal period. We're just reserving it. So you've got the cushion there.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's what you're asking, right, Ken?
Yeah. Does that not contradict what Todd was saying in terms of getting it going, trying to get it done this fiscal year?
It's still in reserve, so you can watch it during the budgeted period. So I don't hear Angie saying that she's got to have all 1.4 million as a cushion. I hear that you're not comfortable with 250,000, but I'm not hearing you say that you need all 1.4 million for cushion.
You're correct, yes.
Okay.
Mhm.
So that would give him some leeway if it's reserved in our budget. If he has to expend some, then we pull it out of reserve and expend it.
Yes, I would have two questions. First of all, we haven't heard.
Right.
And second of all would be, if you approve it, do you have a time frame preference? Matters a little bit to me. That can be.
We have what time?
Do you have a time frame preference?
On
Yeah.
Oak Street now?
Yeah.
Or everything?
Western doesn't matter. The Western's gonna have to wait till summer of '25 simply because it has federal dollars in it that are federal fiscal year '25. They don't come available to us until October of '24. So therefore, the soonest we'll be able to start that project is bid it over the winter of '24, '25, start construction spring of '25.
Because it works in your time schedule.
Well, that's what I said. If it didn't really matter to the council, then I would attempt to do it sooner, Brad. Today, I'll tell you that I would attempt to do it sooner without promising you we could do that.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, it's a lot bigger than me as to whether or not that would work, right?
Wherever you can make work.
Yeah. Yeah, if it can get done sooner, sooner the better.
I think we'd like to get it done, but we'd also want to hear from you what that looks like once you've had a chance to look at it. But what I'm trying to get done here is make sure that we've got the money reserved without having to bond it. And I think that's what you want to hear from the other councilman on.
Yeah. Ken, Brad, Pete saying.
I'm fine with that.
I'm fine with it. I just have a headache. Chantel?
As long as Angie and Todd are comfortable with that.
So then the next rendition that you see of the spreadsheet will have the 1.1 million moved up from requests of consideration to up above. So then it will be allocated and reserved. Okay? That leaves you $246,342 in your estimated cash balance. And that's a
Plus
good
reserve
place
of 1.1 million.
right. Well, yeah, because you'd be moving the 1.1 from
Right.
below to above. So
For a reserve, right, yep. Okay.
okay. Anything else on tax increment financing? All right. Hotel motel tax. Really don't have a whole lot prepared to say on this one. Angie, did you want to help me out on this one? Do you have anything to say?
The only thing would be is the portion that goes to the pavilion, since their levy has gone away. That portion of hotel motel tax actually goes into the general fund to help with their operations, unless you would want to change something like that to help the pavilion continue with their depreciate their capital fund.
So you're saying make a CIP fund?
They have a CIP.
So we would just transfer that difference into it then, or any gains in that area?
So right now, 2/7 of the hotel motel tax goes to the pavilion, which goes into the general fund to help with their operations.
Right.
We levied for the pavilion, and that has been taken away. Am I off?
Mine's down. I'm on.
For once, I can be heard.
levy actually went into their capital fund that was growing, but that has gone away.
Right.
So if you chose to make a change to the pavilion's hotel motel tax, you could do, like, say, 1% to their operating, 1% to their capital, but then that hurts the general fund again, so.
That was
it
my
just an
question.
option.
That was my question. I didn't do it very well, but yes, thank you.
Any other questions?
Any
on-
opinion from the pavilion on operating on that proposal?
I'm so glad you asked. Yes, so that 50-some thousand in the hotel motel tax, we use that. We will be losing a $25,000 gift that has been received for the past 7, 8 years. We have another maybe 2 years left on that. So if we take that away, and if you earmark our hotel motel tax somewhere else, then we will be operating more in the red instead of in the black. We're just, like I said yesterday, our goal is to not expend more than what our revenues are. We can always increase the bar menu prices to increase our revenue, but that's not smart. But if we take away any of that hotel motel tax, it will affect our budget, because eventually we're going to lose the 25,000 as well. Now, whether we use half of that towards operating and half towards the capital, that's fine as well. But we will fight for that to stay within our budget. Just speaking on behalf of my board, who's not here.
Okay,
But it is very important for us to keep that.
thanks
Thank
for
you.
your input.
If I might?
Yes.
So, one more comment on hotel motel taxes with the new motel coming on. You don't have a lot of revenues yet, but you have or a lot of history to work with, but you do have some. There may be an opportunity to analyze the distribution, and it's always dangerous to bring up a comment like this without having included it in a memo ahead of time so people can digest it. But the way that this was set up was from the beginning, and it really hasn't been looked at, I don't think, since the pavilion was built. So now that you have a significant increase taking place in this fund because of new visitors and the new motel, you could take a look at this distribution before, for example, everyone's used to their 3/7 or 4/7 going way up. So you could take 1/7 and put it into the pavilion capital expense fund to make up for that lost levy. If you don't, you may need to look at other funding to make up for that, because eventually you're going to have an issue there. And one of the reasons that we put that in place is everyone remembers what happened to the indoor swimming pool. Now, it's a dramatic example, but having that fund really was nice, and it removed pressure from other funds and also gave you a pot to work with.
I think that we need to look at that.
So, Angie, help me out here. What would 1/7 if we
The park amount. Park is
I'm not-
1/7.
okay, so the park amount is $28,000. So you do a redistribution of this. Maybe we'll work up the numbers and bring it back to the recap.
Okay.
That's fine.
Yeah,
Okay.
but is there general support for that concept of redoing the 7 parts of the penny? And
I don't think we have a choice.
so
Well, I don't know, it makes sense to me.
you either do it now or you may not want to do it, because it's a lot harder to do it a couple of years from now, especially when SCDC, for example, is used to the new revenue. And I haven't prepped them before I made this comment. I just so I might be barbecuing a sacred cow here, but this this is worth talking about because we've lost a major source of revenue for our pavilion that we have depended on, even though it's small. It's major in the sense that it was really doing a lot for the pavilion, and I think we should find a way to replace it, and the time to replace it is this year before everybody's used to this new revenue. Is that okay?
Just to be clear, you would still consider the 2/7 coming to the pavilion, but possibly splitting that?
No, I'd say recalibrating the whole
Okay.
7 parts of the penny, and SCDC, they were getting how much now?
4/7.
4 7s. They would get 3 7s. You would get 2 7s. Park would get 1 7th, and then the
rest should go to
last
capital.
last
Okay.
7th would go to your capital fund. Did I get to 7 with that?
You did.
Yeah.
Okay.
I just wanted to be clear that we weren't going
I
to
held up
lose
4
out on the
fingers, I get
2.
the 7.
Add one more finger, that's
7.
fine. Okay, thank you very much.
Okay.
Do that math
Two.
again. Pavilion gets 2. SCDC gets 4?
3.
SC
Or currently,
Yeah.
right now,
You said 4.
SCDC currently gets 4.
yes.
Okay,
Pavilion gets 2, park gets 1.
all right.
And I've got both numbers, both sheets linked, so you can see both of them linked there underneath item 10C. Hotel motel tax distribution 23-24 and 24-25. They're both there, so you can see the
Okay.
projections.
Yep.
So what this is just a redistribution of the gains that we're getting from the extra tax in revenue, correct?
Yes.
Yes. You're just dividing it differently, but you're still covering everybody's budget needs.
Okay, wait, I need clarification. then.
You said 3 SCDC, 2 pavilion, 1 park, and then 1 for reserve, correct?
One for pavilion capital reserve.
Gotcha.
Because of the increases, no one's really getting would be getting a cut,
SCDC,
even if you did that,
SCDC
right?
SCDC would get a cut, and that would probably affect marketing. And I think we would hear about that.
But with
We
the
hear about it.
increases, how much of a cut would that, you said it's up because of the new motel and such, and new.
Well, let's pencil that out for you, and we'll put it out,
Yeah.
we'll bring
Right.
it, let's bring it back, and then that, it's all subject to a hearing, but,
Right. Why don't you show us how it affects each one?
right. Okay. Anything else on hotel motel?
No.
Okay. Bonding capital projects, I don't know if I need to say more that's already been said. Is there anything else? I hit most of it under TIF.
I do have a question on the tanker for Brad, if he can answer it. Brad, since a tanker is not necessarily like a ladder truck or a pumper, is there more options of where we can purchase that would give us quicker delivery?
Nope. I checked with 3 different vendors, and they're all anywhere from 2 to 2.5 years out
On a tanker?
on a tanker truck, yes. Pumpers are more,
And ladders or more?
correct.
Okay. So I am correct, but it's still way the heck out there.
Yeah.
Okay. So how long have we been operating even at a deficit without having this tanker in our fleet? And I think we talked a little bit yesterday about how you compensate for that with calls to other departments for assistance on those.
For a while, we had 2, we had an Army truck, and then after that broke down, we got through a DNR grant. I don't remember how many years we had it, and it ended up breaking down, and we gave it back to them. That's been a number of years ago. I'm gonna say 15 at least.
So would there be rental options available on tanker?
I'm sure there is.
Kind of like we did with the ladder. We rented until we got the new one.
I would hate to see what the price was.
Well, how long does it, if you go somewhere, on the average, how long does it take to get support from another fire department?
10, 15, I mean, it depends on where you're at,
But you're not gonna run out of water with the first one before the second?
Absolutely you will.
You will? How long does it take you to drain one?
Your pumps 1,500 gallons a minute. So if you put a hand line out at 100 gallons a minute,
What's the capacity of the
you have 700
tanker?
gallons on a truck,
Well,
you
that's
have
all.
2,000 gallons on a water truck.
Okay.
So, and our rule of thumb is we never run the pump dry of water.
Right.
In case you have an old crap moment where you need the CYA, to be frank with you, you need to have some water on a truck.
Yeah.
You can't go bone dry. So
Right.
2,000 gallons, 100 gallons a minute, 10 minutes, 20 minutes actually.
Okay.
Okay. Is that pretty much a standard size?
Yes. You can get bigger, but we like 2,000 gallon because it's faster turnaround.
Okay.
You're single axle, and you can, it's just easier to get into farm places.
And that's what you were looking at?
That's where the primary
Another,
use
a
was.
second 2,000 gallon tank?
Yep.
Okay.
How long is the turnaround to fill it and put it back?
Depends on how far you're out in the country.
Yeah.
Depends on hydrant, depends on a lot of variables.
So if you ordered today, it'd be 2.5 years before we received it.
Correct.
And that's paid for in full upfront?
No, 10% down, I believe it was, and then the chassis you have to pay. One company was the markup of the chassis, whatever the chassis cost you, plus $7,000 is what their markup is. And the other company was whatever the chassis cost, that's what you pay when the chassis shows up.
So you're basically buying the chassis up front.
On when the chassis is delivered to the manufacturer.
Oh, when it's delivered from the manufacturer to them.
10% down when you sign the contract, and then the chassis is paid for when it shows up at the manufacturer.
And that's
So you-
50% of the full cost, or
Somewhere in there.
just close? I mean, it's not you're not, the full
Yeah,
cost,
you're talking, probably
150,000.
175, 180,000.
Okay.
So that could be an option for the next fiscal budget is to look at just covering what it would take. Because even when the chassis is going to take a year to get to, honestly. So,
For example, if we ordered one today, the guy told me the chassis would be here in July of 2025.
yeah. So
And then,
that would be right at the end of our budget. So, but that might be a way of looking at it instead of the whole
Yeah.
shooting match. So,
and that's kind of why we wanted to get in front of your eyes, to realize it's 2.5 years out. And if we want this to come in, about 27, we need to start thinking about it this budget year. And it's going to take us probably 6-8 months to spec one out, go look at different companies.
so you're expecting what, 380 is your estimating on that truck?
Yeah, it's just
Yeah,
shot in the dark.
right. So 10% of that is 40,000.
Yep.
Okay.
And again, we have, what Sam said, 175,000 in that reserve capital.
So we've got money in that we could use too.
Yep,
in
and that
this.
will, there's some township money that keeps coming into that, and fire fees goes into that.
And then we could definitely look at next budgeting cycle for the,
Balance.
it would have to be, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
I'm trying to add it up in my head, but something like that, so,
If I might.
yeah.
So you have flexibility up until the point you sign the contract. Once you sign the contract, you're required by Iowa code to have the funds sequestered, or the funds, you know, you're agreeing to buy it. So you really should have the funds in an account when you order something.
Even though we aren't going to take delivery 2.5 years down the road?
When you sign the contract,
Okay.
and you've done your bids, you need to have,
So how do we cover ourselves for that without tying up $250,000 to sit around for 2.5 years?
That's how it works with, I know the laws haven't caught up with how things
Well,
currently operate.
I understand that, but is there some other option?
So basically,
Well, sure,
it
you
is-
could set it aside in reserves, or you just reserve it somehow, but if you're going to order it and sign for it, the money must be set aside. And I like your thinking, I would like to do it that way, but that's,
So basically it is, you gotta pay for it up front, or borrow for it up front. You can't wait to borrow we're projecting the acceptance date or the chassis date. Once you sign the contract, and that happens right up front, whenever you've made your decision.
It's
the money's gotta be-
40,000 right at the beginning, just 40,000.
Yeah, but you've gotta have the other money set aside in reserve, if I'm hearing you
But
correctly.
that won't be until the next budget.
You-
That'll get expended.
But you still have to have it earmarked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Earmarking and expending, it's two different things, so.
But you have to have it in hand.
Yeah,
Right.
I mean, you can't just pretend.
if for some reason it comes in sooner, you have to be able to,
So you got the CIP for, have 194,000. So you reserve the other portion of it, the chassis? Well, that's right. That's right. I'm focused on just one item right now, I know. But it's trying to see once. I don't know if you do or not, No, you're just bringing us all back to reality, thank
It's
you.
looking less and less like a possibility the longer we talk. So, all right,
Okay.
see where it falls.
What is, Sam, you threw out a number, was it like, how much do you think we'd have by the end of '25 in that reserve account?
244 and change.
Okay, so
All right, Ange?
somewhere close.
That'd leave 100,000 left on the purchase.
What? Sorry. 244, 825, 64.
Adjourn.
Right, so is bonding off the table for if bonding's still on the table for the tanker, that decision needs to be made soon, because Scott Stevenson said we're required to add that to the levy prior to the March publishing date. So it doesn't sound like it is, but if you want to bond for it, then that decision needs to be made in the next few weeks. Okay?
I think, based on the conversation, we're saying if there was another way of doing it, we would prefer that over bonding. Am I right?
Yeah, but it doesn't appear that there is.
Well, yeah, I mean, it isn't appearing that way, but
How about you defer this for a little bit until you get back to your local option sales tax items? Get
Okay.
through the presentation from our
all right.
partners. So I'm finished with capital projects and bonding for now. Under item number 12, there's an important spreadsheet that I have linked. I know time is brief here, but since we have someone who needs to leave here soon, but under item number 12, I have it linked in Excel and in PDF. So it's easier on iPad to open it up in the PDF, so I'm looking at it. This is general fund only, and this is all of the departments with measurable revenues. It doesn't include this building, which has revenues for rentals, and it doesn't include water and sewer, but it includes pretty much everything else. So I'm gonna point out something that came up when I showed this to one of the council members earlier today, because this is an important question that I think not all the department heads have even seen this. We finished this just a few hours ago. There is a possibility that there are mistakes, but one of the questions that came up is, if you look at the police department, for example, under expenses, 591,000 in 1920, and then in 21-22 it was at 754,000, and it dropped down to 672 the following year. That is because of payouts, because you had a couple of retirements. Does that make sense? That's one of the reasons why there was a fluctuation in that. So this again, this doesn't include things like cars being or vehicles being purchased out of local option sales tax, and it doesn't include TIF expenditures. This is what's happening in the general fund in terms of the end of the year, your revenues versus expenses. It does include never mind. That's all I had. Any questions on that? Library, Angie, it doesn't include revenue from
Yes, tax.
sales tax.
Or, I mean, I'm
Property
property
tax.
tax, I'm sorry.
Okay. Okay. If we can move on right into 13. So requests from partner organizations, rides, Hugh Lively with rides, and Barry Witzel with the village. This is an agreement that we have that's signed by both the village and by rides, and but it's an annual appropriation, so you can change that each year if you would like. It's been at $20,000 since the beginning of this, 4 or 5 years now, and now it's proposed to go to 25. So, and this is in tax increment financing, and it's already on the funded section. Anything on that? Okay. Golf, you're up. Turn it back over to you.
Okay. Thanks again for putting up with me. Listen to me. If any of you have been out to the golf course, we've done some capital improvement projects the last few years, and done some things on the range, which gets heavily used by the youth program. Of course, this last year, if you've been out there and looked at the cart sheds, we've replaced some roofing, we've replaced some sidings out there, we've painted them up, we've done a lot of work, and been a great improvement to the golf course. So thank you for the partnership on those projects. So where do we go going forward here with where did we come up with 25? We were approached this last year by a local business after they were out on our course and said, your bridges are weak, and which we are fully aware of. We just talked about this, they're 23 years old, 1991. Is that right? 33 years old, excuse me. Bad math. 33 years old. We were approached by a local business, and they said they were willing to build us some bridges. They could build about 2 in a year, and they would donate the labor. We would have to pay for the materials. If we had to pay for this whole thing for the 2 bridges, we'd spend well over $100,000. I think they came in and said we'd just be a little over 50. So we thought last year when we did our project, we had asked for 15, and we were 15 to pay for our project. It ended up being about 40, and we did raise a little more money, so that worked out pretty well. But this, of course, being a bigger project, we didn't just throw a dart at the wall and say, hey, where'd that number come from? Came up with that 25 based off the little over 50 and hoping we can raise the balance. So again, your partnership is greatly appreciated. Anything you can do, we greatly appreciate. Thank you.
Just a quick question.
Yeah.
Is that offer from the business, is that a standing offer?
Yes.
So whether you take advantage of it next year or the year after?
I can't answer that 100%. That offer was made last fall. No, I can't answer that 100%.
Okay.
So my belief is, and our hope is, that we can do 2 this year, 2 the next year.
All right.
That would be ideal for our situation, and because doing all at once would be too much for us, too much for them also.
Appreciate the information on that. Thank you.
Any other questions for Larry?
I have a quick question, if that's okay. Question for you. So last year, Kurt Strauss and I were invited out to a meeting where there was, it might have been a year before, there was discussion on a new clubhouse and city participation. Is that a request that is coming to the city?
That's a long-term goal. That's not off the table. I don't say that hasn't moved forward at a very high pace. We had some engineer estimates. We thought were high. We went back and got some plans drawn at Chase to help us lower the cost. We're still in the process of that. As a board, we've talked about some things and said, if we are going to tackle that big of a project down the road, we first need to get our house in order. And in other words, we needed to take care of those cart sheds. We need to take care of these bridges. We need to take care of those things that, those smaller items before we try to tackle that bigger project. That hope is still there. Will it happen? We all hope so. Other than that, I can't say. There's plans, but that's a lot of work yet before that happens.
All right.
I don't know if that answers that, but yeah, it's in the long-term plans.
Okay. I think that's it. Thank you, Larry.
Thank you.
All right. Next up, Mid-Sioux Opportunities. Is there any representative here from Mid-Sioux?
No.
Okay. Children's World Request. Anybody want to talk to that one? Maybe I should ask who is here.
LLRC is here.
LLRC, okay. Who's here for the LLRC? All right.
On behalf of NCC and the LLRC, we express our gratitude for the allocation that you've been providing for the past several years. It is instrumental in assisting the Parks and Rec Department in their activities, and so we make our facility available to the city for Parks and Rec type activities, and it's been a very good partnership. Of course, we are requesting same funding level as our prior year. However, in future years, we may need to look at requesting additional funding. Our cost of operation continue to increase, and so very grateful for the partnership and the investment that the city is making on the behalf of their citizens.
No.
For the record, could you state your
Oh,
name? I'm sorry.
I'm Brian Nash. I'm the COO and CFO of the college.
Okay.
So,
Thank you, Brian.
yep.
Upper Des Moines Opportunity? And we'll start with your name first this time.
Hello, I'm Shakira Meyer, and I'm the Director of Development for Upper Des Moines Opportunity. And so on behalf of the agency and our Executive Director, Julie Edwards, we thank you as the city for your continued support and allocations that partner with us and the county and private entities to ensure that individuals challenged by low incomes and poverty continue to be able to remain in their homes. And when they remain in their homes, they keep their children in your school system and keep the economy rolling. We did increase our ask just slightly, and I understand your budget is tight and respect that. We noticed on our end with operations it continues to increase. We're finding families are experiencing greater stress with their incomes. Most of the individuals who come into utilize our services, they're getting assistance for rent, their utilities, helping to make ends meet with their grocery budget. But their funds are not going as far as they used to, just like the rest of us are experiencing that. So we appreciate your consideration and your partnership to continue to support the citizens of the city of Sheldon. Thank you.
And thank you.
Thanks.
Sheila, is that what it was? The first name? Shakira. Okay, thank you. Right. And then Family Crisis Centers?
All right, so hello everyone.
And your name?
Jessica Roars. I serve as the Executive Director for Family Crisis Centers. Family Crisis Centers has an office in the Fusion Building here in Sheldon, and that's also where like Downtown Grounds Coffee Shop is. So Family Crisis Centers is a nonprofit agency. We serve victims of crime, so domestic violence, human trafficking, assault, homicide, you name a violent crime, we're serving victims and survivors. Last fiscal year, we served 56 Sheldon citizens of violent crimes, helping them walk through that journey, whether that be grief, resources, assistance. We also answered 40 crisis calls that came into the agency. So we have an advocate that is dedicated to respond to Sheldon citizens at any time, day or night, if that is an emergency. So if it's 3 a.m. and the hospital calls us saying there's a victim at the hospital that would like an advocate, we're committed to responding within an hour. So in the letter we provided, with the average cost of a client last fiscal year, the agency with the services we provided Sheldon citizens, we were about a little bit under $50,000. Come to you guys with a new ask. Our overall agency budget is about $3.5 million. We serve, we have a statewide call center, domestic violence program, we're in 17 counties. Homicide and violent crimes, we're in 29 counties, so that's why you see such a large budget there. 2.5 comes from state and federal grants, and then $1 million each year we need to raise in community support and fundraisers. So going out to the different cities that we serve, asking them to invest in our mission. We know that the stronger our families are, the stronger our communities are, and the safer our communities are. So just asking you all to consider our $5,000 ask to go towards the advocate that works out of our Sheldon office.
All right. Any questions for Jessica? Since this is a new request?
Okay, thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Jessica. Is there anyone else here that's I have missed that we're making a request? I don't think so. All right. I would propose that we take a break, a short break, bathroom break, whatever. Those of you that have presented and want to leave, it would be a good time for you to exit. So you've been sitting here impatiently. I appreciate that. So let's meet back here quarter after? 10 minutes? 10-minute break. We'll meet again at quarter after and try and finish this up.
what I did. The whole thing.
Seth? Trying to remember all the numbers. Right. Yep. Yep. See ya.
But you, I mean, that makes fish. Those figures. Those figures.
Yeah. It's happened for years.
When I was in college, I worked in highway construction, and the one company could never his name, they called everybody Fred. Hey, Fred, get over here.
Oh, about a headshot tomorrow? Chantel. Right. Great. We could redo. There you go.
The reason we have a second hotel is.
Oh, wow. There you go. On a, like a 20-minute meeting, right? That would be good.
We did talk
Right.
about that when I was in town. I
As long as you get the same amount of
But I
money,
took them to
didn't
the
they
app,
do the last year than
I
last
love
year?
the app. They said, hey, you need visibility from home. I'm like, yeah. Yes, sir, there is. We looked at that, we only have one place on Fifth Avenue, there's that Bush.
Fire chief, yeah.
So just to the left of him, between him and Bank, there's a block a little bit, not like the green. That's what's bad. I was thinking that yesterday and then today.
Does anyone really complain about it as much as me?
Yeah. So,
Okay, good.
I brought it up as a rule for the planning, I'll bring it up.
Well, good job, Sheldon.
The trees make it really good.
There you go.
Especially when they're.
There you go, there you go.
Partnering with
But. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, funny.
Especially in soccer. Especially when it hurts very much.
The only place I allowed the
Okay.
drive.
She's from college, right? Yeah. Yeah. What's that? Yeah, there you go. How they ended up having to on it. It's on 5th Street. It's like right off Right. Right. Yeah, he's really right now because he's on fire. What's that?
on it, 'cause they're off work a little bit early. It
It works okay. Yeah.
Oh, why?
Redistribution.
You have to give me a little bit tomorrow. Oh, yeah. All right, I know. Sure. We don't have money like that.
No, this is the Kansas super bond. I'll explain why there were cans up here, maybe they're down below.
Okay.
And there's a reason for age, right?
Don't say the name. They just show up. I mean. Okay.
When you get that, would you inform me? And I'm gonna go.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Or Friday. Maybe Friday. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Move along, Tricia.
Yes, yeah, so you're going to play in the playoffs? Team members. I have no problem with making it 40 playoff.
I do too. I feel bad. I feel bad.
It would be nice if he would just well for the game.
Oh.
We could get our seats, we'd get
I call him.
Well, we need to jump back to,
Tricia, I think we're ready.
I didn't get reader yet.
Couldn't be heard.
I didn't touch
Was
it.
that on purpose?
I don't touch it.
I think the Billy.
Yeah, I don't touch them.
click on laws.
We need to, we're going to recap. And the first thing I'd like to recap is local sales tax. We need to hit that again. So under item 10, PDF. Everybody there? No. All right, Sam, the floor is yours.
Okay, so as I said earlier in response to Tom's question, 20,000 essentially work with out of reserves, out of the the $250,000 recommendation is it's a recommendation that Angie and I, based past experience and knowing expenses come up throughout the year, like lighting, and this is the go-to place for those kind of. So we recommend do your best to have a $250,000 that is flexible. We encourage not sure you'll leave yourselves in a pinch later in the full year. So $20,000 that you worked with there, and at the top are request consideration, or you could start with the presentations that you just and knock out those four items however you would like.
We just heard from all of these, I should say, we think that's going to be an easier conversation. That would be my recommendation. Objecting, so let's do that.
So, take it.
Yep.
Okay. So, we'll just start off with communities, 1,300, here was 250. Right?
Kind of, like Tom's thinking earlier, is leave them all the same that they were last year.
So,
And then do that.
Go half.
We've got to give somebody to provide a service.
Gives our department heads to keep their budgets down, and they have. Looking at them, a lot of them are, 3 and 4%. Some of the increases are from 67%, 100% increase, 21% increase, 8% increase. Just my thoughts.
Yesterday, that was my thought too, but after hearing from some of them, they're all facing the same problem we are. We're all in the same boat in terms of shortfalls in our budget. So then I'm thinking, meet them halfway. But I'm just throwing it out there for this, another option to consider. See what the rest of you are thinking, but, and get it so, Mike.
Yeah, you're 16 what?
I can join in my thoughts, understand the community. But I'd have to let city and the taxpayers who.
Go ahead, Sam.
While we were thinking about this, I guess we haven't had a chance to really talk about family crisis centers. Get a chance to cut them and you thought this particular request.
What? Could you come to the mic?
Was it last year, the couple of years we've given to another organization? Do you remember?
That was CASA, I think it was like $50.
So, not really comparing an apples to apples then. I mean, we, you know, like they were involved with our homicide. I mean, they helped the family out with that.
Yeah.
Brad, you made the comment this, we owe it to the citizens of Sheldon. In cases, I don't know about everyone, but I mean, they took, so, it seems contradictory or not. I mean, they are providing 56 shelters.
So it's about a person.
But I think also our fiscal responsibility is the city budget.
Yeah, so where's, I guess, that's where we decide.
And that $10,000 on the golf course can go to $10,000 to the library for windows. That also does help. The operating goes down, the air conditioning goes down.
They want 5,000 is what they're asking?
Family crisis centers, 5.
And they, nothing last year?
Correct.
No, it is a new request.
That's what I thought.
Word on this all. What you think about it before you, we don't, how does it affect the general fund if we don't give them all what they're asking? Is that coming out of the fund or is that coming from another source?
Your request would not come from a partner organization. It wouldn't be fund the general. It just wouldn't be fund.
What fund would it be?
Lost.
Well, all the four of the opportunity and
This is TIF, not lost, TIF.
golf.
Do we have anything left in there? If the,
You have some difficult decisions to make if you're looking at the police capital items, and you know, important what's listed there. You just have to say whether you fund those, the regular of sales tax, or fund them from the capital improvements account that you've created already and lost last year, or a bond, or a combination.
they do provide a service, and if it's, you know, it's something that we can add to later. And I would, my opinion, something is better than nothing. We'd have to depend on what that something is, but it's not that we can't add as time goes by, but it's a new request and we're hurting to begin with. It's my opinion.
The P at 102,470, last one 820. Is that, are both next? There's a parenthesis on the 100.
Parentheses are just so it deducts out of the total at the bottom.
Okay. A balance in that?
At the end of this fiscal year, there will be the 91,821. And
Okay.
then next fiscal year, we'll contribute 470.
offered they've done last year. Anyone else want to comment something else, or?
So what about Family Crisis Center, since they didn't have an ask?
What was that?
What about Family Crisis Center? They didn't have an ask last year.
I mean, I'd hate to be cheap, but I think they deserve something, even if it's $1,000 or something.
I agree with that, but what something is.
I would agree with that also. I agree with what Greg said, that these are reports for the city of Sheldon.
If we give the court more bridges, that for the bridges.
I don't think we know that.
Otherwise, I agree with them and adding something for the crisis. You guys can determine the price.
Okay, we have that. We plug that number, that last number, crisis. How much?
2,500, half of it.
Half of it?
Okay.
Just a conversation.
That, I think that, I'm okay.
So we would fund golf course at 15,000, Mid-Sioux at 250, Upper Des Moines at 3,300. At point, yes. Do you want to deal with the other TIF funded as long as we're on it, or do you want to?
Lost.
Okay.
They're already funded. You've pretty much already locked away TIF at this point.
TIF,
good question.
Location. Like, Family Crisis Center might be in a building that they're renting and it's not in the urban renewal area. It's also not light, not.
Okay.
The ones that we're funding through TIF are either urban renewal area, I don't know.
Somerset, Blanchard, you would have a pilot work on daycare.
Yeah, daycare was considered a economic development. So there's three major elements. There's economic development, there's blight, and the lesser one is a cultural amenity, and that one isn't used very often because the definition is a little bit tight, but that's what we're using, for example, Nicole, with the library. And it also works for the pavilion, and then the pavilion that fits well into economic development.
Okay. Does that answer your question? All right. Let's move on.
I'm doing some quick math here.
Okay.
Quick math, that brings your new total to 42,886.32. Was my.
You, Todd. Okay, so you
What else
have.
do you want to?
Well, you have and that is defer that to urban renewal. So when we think in a future.
In a future year, and we had conversation, so.
Yeah. Okay.
You know, it's a priority of the park. Things like there's a different funding source for consideration next year would be positive.
Everyone in agreement with that? Okay.
The next one right above is pavilion improvements in the retaining wall.
That earlier, they're using some of their capital reserve towards that project?
Or storage building, I don't remember which.
5,000, 7 is for the side front, so we
Yep.
would have a balance left. Our last board meeting, we had about wants versus needs, that is not so much making the backyard look more aesthetically pleasing and defined. And to be honest, we have no clue what a storage is going to cost. We're not looking to shed. It'd be something very simple. The outside would be aesthetically just like it was meant to be, storage, shelving, and so. So, what, 1,000? Yeah.
Yes.
So, yeah, we don't even know sure if we did the around 50,000.
Wall?
Yeah,
What about
just south of the patio.
Okay.
in the
Kind of
trail.
shield from all that
Right,
goes past
right.
there.
Doing, eventually we should something, because walkers are fine, it's the pets or other things that for our guests when they're doing wedding picture. Thank you.
May I make a suggestion? So do you remember last year we had a couple of items in local option sales tax that we deferred towards the middle of the fiscal year? Remember that? Okay, so I'm both working with Brian, and there's the pavilion improvement, the library would both be eligible. Right? The pavilion was eligible too.
Yeah.
I remember there was a whole list of things we went through.
I was actually thinking Jenna's pavilion had a much better chance of being qualified. Because we can relate the pavilion directly to economic development with the hotels, with potentially more restaurants, whatever. So I think the pavilion is a very good chance of getting funded. I don't think, my feeling is there isn't much less on the tip side.
Yeah.
I used the blight, and she was lukewarm.
Anyway, so the 63,000, and let's defer that towards the, maybe just remove that for now, or move that towards the middle of the fiscal year, and we can discuss that again. And then on how things are looking, because, I don't know, I'll stop talking right there, but we could do it that way.
Okay.
Clarification to the 42,000 number that I said earlier, that was leaving the reserve at 270. So if you went to the recommended low at actually 62,000.
Okay. All right.
And then you could just take the 20 out of, you have room to take the 20 for the library out of the remainder. You still have 2.
Okay. Everybody on board?
I would be in.
Yeah.
That also saves Todd and I on the urban renewal side, right, Todd?
Yeah.
All right. Is that it?
Fire.
No. And then, okay, the two left are fire capital.
You have 3 left, just to clarify.
The library.
No, the library, we kind of talked, like,
Yeah.
maybe either, well, the third one is not particularly listed here, but based on the earlier discussion on the take, you're talking about pulling funding from various places. Where did you come from? So I'm not quite clear. There's so
I would think 200,000 out of our reserve fund. That would leave us 4,000 in there. We'd have to just come up with a balance.
The fire CA.
Yeah,
Yeah,
fund that
Yeah.
townships and
Right.
fire fees go into, just have to find 180. That account was designed to do.
The rig is merely going to be used for.
Yeah.
So, okay. So there's.
Sorry, Brad, what was that balance, did you say?
244 into next year, I think is what Sam said.
Okay.
200.
we won't use, I could be here.
It ain't been put in time.
Is it delivered?
Remember reading delivery, now it's 15.
Means we're basically letting that go, money, because that was going to be for the tax.
Yep, cut out later.
Yeah.
Now, we did not use the fund and dryer. Our machine that we got, fire marshal's grant, the 10 thermal imagers. So is that 24,000 still in law?
I wouldn't make the transfer, so you're talking about up in that 28.5 in the current year?
Yeah, 'cause we just got the grants.
Okay, so no, I will at the end of the fiscal year when you're done
Okay.
expending your capital, then transfer that money. Yep.
'Cause that's, like I said, we never spended that money because of the grants, and we bought the thermal images with our fundraiser, so
How much in total?
ish, a little bit more. Because I think $818 for the installation of, and moving the old unit for the new one.
If we just make it an even 25, then we have 150, 160 left to look.
Yep.
So it'd be 24,000 more than the total is here. Interesting.
So we look.
help me out with the options. As I see it, the two main options would be from, I didn't think through that. Let me think about this.
Okay.
Any thoughts?
I'm curious, can you add it to the existing emergency services debt that we have?
Which,
The ambulance and police cars? Add it to it and refinance?
well, that's the, that note is almost paid off.
Yeah, so,
So,
otherwise you're talking about taking out another note.
well,
so-
that note was through Iowa State Bank, the lower interest rate, so it'd probably be it would be a new hearing.
Mhm.
But, yeah, that was the theory that I brought up yesterday. Since that's falling off, you could replace it with,
But that's in 2 years.
well, no, because if you look at the amortization schedule, it's, in this next fiscal year, it's gonna be down to like 100 and some thousand left. In the last year, it will only be 30, it's almost paid off.
I
So,
understand that. But if, I guess I'm not following you.
and I'm not following you.
Okay.
Sorry, sorry.
Add on to add on to the existing rather than write a whole new.
Backseat driver.
Borrow again, you borrow on that, to do that. That's what her question is, right?
Yeah,
Am I
that
understanding?
is true. Yes, that's what I was asking.
It would require a new note and a new hearing. But in terms of the levy impact, it would be just as you talk about it, would have very little impact because it's almost, the note's almost paid off. The largest portion of the principal is already, you have $100,000 left or so of $650.
After the 23-24 payment, you'd have about $160,000.
And then next year was 37, right?
That is correct.
So our debt levy this year is, in the upcoming year is dropping 9 cents. So it'll drop even more in the future year.
Yeah.
So I mean, you could just take out another note and then our debt levy will go up just a little bit.
Everybody following this? Works for me. You guys know the mechanics of this all. If that makes sense, let's do it. It depends from what I'm hearing.
How much note do you want to take out?
Talking 155 to that 100 and, after that 200,000, we're down to 108. The 25 you didn't use, every 1,000, so 150, 160.
So you have 100,000 and then you have,
15 and the 70, 72.
right. You have the 115
Oh,
and the
you're-
77 too. You have,
Those, yeah, the police and the items.
I thought we were talking about the tanker.
But
oh,
we
but
got
I
that.
want to forget,
Okay.
then we'll get a,
Pay for them somehow. That's what he's saying.
Choices for them, or pick cash.
They have,
100,000,
Right.
290.
yeah, which would cover. But I'd like to leave a cover too.
Oh, I haven't given that one any thought. Got the 250.
so Angie, 100,000, if that's what we end up, is all we're worth.
That's the tanker we're talking about.
Just the balance on the thing.
Well, that's the point with it. We've done internal loans before. We go through the process of bond counsel and hearings and all of
Cheaper.
that for for 155,000 and third one of his.
I think I did it probably.
Could we do some, what is that one? The 7, oh, it's not,
So if you're looking at 155,000 loan, here's why it matters to me. So for instance, if you're talking about, what's the water fund surcharge?
water,
Water improvement.
below,
So there's money in there that's not that as well. Water sales money is, right? So you could take it out of there, but out of there, that will be depleted by 20 because that will bring our paying. There's about another, not for the expansion.
It's expansion.
There's about $1,000. If it's gonna be more than a couple of years, I would suggest you don't take out of it. Right? If it's gonna be longer than that, then I think we need to look, I don't think that should,
You don't think what?
that fund should not be considered if it's gonna be longer than a year or so.
Which one can you spare on change?
Well, if I, so I think we could theoretically pay it back by if we start, try to get right back into the loss program. I mean, theoretically, we could have it paid off by the time it's delivery in 2.5 years. I think that would work.
Yeah. Technically, then we have the funds.
You have the fund.
But
Because we really won't need
we don't need
we
the
just have to
balance.
have it earmarked that you're
Right.
gonna borrow the money,
Identify
but
the
you're
source
paying
would never
10%
take.
down
Kind
to
of
the
what Tom
front,
was talking about earlier.
and then you're gonna have, so you'll have about 200,000 when the chassis comes to pay. So then you only have 180 to come up with, but you have to earmark it.
Right.
So, did I hear an internal loan from loss reserves payable back 2 years? Is that what I heard?
To the,
It was more like 2.5.
2.5 years to order, yes.
That's not
and you probably wouldn't order until,
We're gonna, or we,
So no years,
3
really.
years, yeah.
it's probably the end of the year to have something. By the time you go through the loan,
Is that next year and the next year, you have to know you started your lost balance that much lower.
yep,
Right? That's you just have to know that. So when somebody else with a request, you say, oh, well,
They are from the bank. Rather,
well, there's other places, I mean, sewer depreciation is very.
Throwing out funds, I mean,
Yeah, there's funds, there is no fund.
I'm thinking the cattle land sale, $700,000.
do it
If we
internally.
can, yeah.
I don't care what funding comes out. I'm not gonna look at that work. How that all, we could do internally too. Then this works.
Several
you have to
downside of
track
the
it,
lost.
yep,
Right.
just have to track it.
And you lose.
That sounds
You've got the
reasonable.
framework now, you can work hills, is what we talked about.
Yeah, it would be part of the authorizing resolution when it's time, when Brad puts forward the contract and is ready to buy, we'd have a nice little page resolution that would lay out, and then
Sounds like the best.
Everybody good with that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I am.
interest rate charges.
Should be a little on the other hand. A little better than credit card.
You're getting personality.
No, we're all the city.
Yeah.
So that's the item 3 you're talking about. We still have to deal with fire and police capital items, yes?
You do.
All right. 115 for police capital, and 2 for the fire capital items.
Is there a cushion that you want in the reserve? For
Not me, no.
Okay. So can't that, 'cause,
That's what it was.
right,
Yeah.
I mean, that would cover it, right?
So out of reserves makes sense to you, bookkeepers?
Yep. The IP Reserves Purchasing Task Force.
Yeah.
Yep.
In favor?
All right.
Consensus, I just, but yeah.
Yep.
Vaughn? Got some now, haven't you?
No.
You're still smiling.
All right.
Where are we at? A couple of other things that I have to say that I might kind of move into we're at the FAP. So, the final recap, there are a couple of things that I would like to mention, solutions and things that I think that might need direction on. One is, direction, just consensus is fine, but Angie and I are looking at changing ambulance and pavilion to be set up as enterprise funds in future years so that we can have better visibility of revenues and expenses. So it'd be set up like when you look at that one sheet further up on the agenda that has a list of all of the funds like library and fire capital and water and wastewater, but having a separate fund for that so that we can keep better track of those expenses. So you don't have as much flowing in and out of the general fund. If you saw that sheet that I presented to you earlier that I linked late this afternoon, the general fund is significantly funding some of these other departments, and not as much the pavilion, but it would be a really good idea I've been wanting to do that for this budget, or the fiscal, but the changes from the state shifted our focus, and we didn't get it done. But that's something that we are looking at doing for next year. The 26. You want a conversation? Probably have a conversation about if you want to. You have to recap next Wednesday since it's getting. But the fire department site selection expenditure and the $400,000 ambulance the remodel expenditure could be put aside by the council until emergency service and get together on the same page, develop vision. And I'd recommend all four be on the same page, which I think is definitely a possibility prior to any new proposals coming forward. I don't think there's any need to spend further funds until that occurs. Emphasize that there's a strong desire themselves to do that and bring forward a vision for moving forward. I do think it's important, and I talked to this today, as I do, and Wayne's not here. I sent him a message earlier this morning, but I haven't had a chance to actually talk to him today. But I do think we need to wait to switch EMA to hourly this coming year. By ordinance, they're part of the fire department now. The fire department is still paid call. Over a year ago or so, there was discussion the fire to hour pay. Brad has been at so that makes sense, and will in the future defer that for now to increase their per call rate to
17, 18, and 19.
right. Yeah, 50, yeah. So it's EMA is 15 now, and it could go to 17, 18, or 19. It would have probably a minimal impact on the EMA budget, but I think that's a better move, I think, than switching to hourly now without knowing what we're jumping into. So I would make that recommendation. So.
Any comments, reaction to that?
It's certainly up to them, but I would think administratively it'd be a lot more complicated to go to hourly. I don't know. I guess I don't know how they'd handle it.
It's a spreadsheet, and you either put one if you show up for a call, if it's a 4-hour call. Now, for the fire department, how we would do it is we would only track the people that go out on the truck. So, for example, the other night we went to Sanborn. So the 4.5 hours we were there, the 7 guys that went would only be getting paid per hour. The ones that show up at the station only get the call that they showed up. They don't get paid per hour.
Oh, well, yeah, it's up to you guys.
So,
I mean,
and it's a matter of a spreadsheet, because I did the first half of this fiscal year this morning, and I just took John's numbers that he had, and the ones that were the hour calls, I put it, if it was an hour and 15, I put an hour, 1.25, 1.5, 4 hours.
Okay.
It's all in a spreadsheet.
So evidently you're keeping that already?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Because there's only, the first half of the year was only a $1,200 increase. We went from per call to per hour for the fire department. But now, February, or January here, that's going to be a whole wall.
Yeah.
Great.
So, it's just bookkeeping and spreadsheets and Excel, and it works good.
Okay.
All right.
You have consensus on those 3
What is
items,
per
or
call
do we
now?
need further discussion on those, the 3 suggestions that I made?
Say it again, would you please?
The three suggestions were Scat and Pavilion to be set up as enterprise funds in a future fiscal year. Probably not this next one. Fire department, $50,000 site selection expenditure. I shouldn't say that it's fire department, but the emergency services $50,000 expenditure and the $400,000 ambulance garage or remodeling expenditure to be deferred until emergency services can get together, develop their vision, and present that vision.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
that just makes good sense. We
And then the
can't
last,
get ahead of it.
and then the last one is keeping EMA at per call for now, and they'll look to, Brad and I can take that offline with Wayne and come up with a number and put that in the resolution when the time comes. So, which would be in June. That sound good, Brad?
Yeah.
Okay.
Whatever the rest of you guys and gals want to do.
All right.
I guess I need a point of clarification. So if you say that they defer the 50, excuse me, and the 50 and the 400,000, the 50 is in the current budget. The 400,000 is in the future budget. Is it left in there, or do I remove?
Well, we keep them in the budget, but there will be no expenditure of any of the funds until there's another presentation and
Perfect.
we're on the same page.
Yeah, I think we
That
need
makes
more
sense,
information.
yeah. Just keep it in the budget. And the $50,000 would be rolled over.
Yeah.
If it's not spent. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
All right, any other closing, final comments from anyone? Questions, things you're not clear about? I came into this meeting today not looking forward to it. I never really look that forward to budget meetings anyway, but given where we were at and just the stuff that was flying around, I was concerned that it was not going to go well. And I have to say, I was very happy with the way we worked through all these issues. I think one thing we need to remember is that we are all playing for the same team. We're not a conference. We're not the Big Ten, one of 14 teams in the Big Ten Conference, which never made sense to me. But I understand. But we are all one team within that conference. And we are looking to do everything we can to make this community prosper and grow and be a great place to live. And so as we work through some of these issues, I mean, the work really begins now. I just hope and encourage each and every one of us to keep that in mind, that we're on the same team. And it's not, if one of us succeeds, we all succeed. So vying for position, trying to get, afraid you're not going to get your share, that's not a concern. Don't mean that not be the main concern. Let me say it that way. Keep that focus on what's good for all. So with that, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
I just want to,
Oh, yes, sorry.
just want to thank all the department heads, Todd, Angie, Sam, the council, for all the hard work putting the budget together and working through all the tightrope and doing a good job. So appreciate it.
Anything else? I should have asked comments right away.
Second that. Oh. With that, I would move to adjourn.
Did you have any comments before we do? Okay, we have a motion, second. Roll call, please.
Did Ken second it?
Yep.
Okay. Hint.
Aye.
Snyder.
Aye.
Hamel.
Aye.
Ostra. Aye.